Hello, it's John Heaton, and today I'm going to revisit Beatles album Beatles for Sale, primarily because I picked up a new copy of it yesterday, which I'm going to show you. So I'm going to actually, first thing I'm going to do is, well, first of all, I'll say it came out on 4th of December 1964, so just in time for Christmas for Beatles fans. And if one looks throughout the 60s, most of the years Beatles fans had something to celebrate Christmas with. 63 they had With the Beatles, 65 64 they had this, 65 they had Rubber Soul and We Can Work It Out Day Tripper single, 67 they had Mystery Tour, both the album and the EP, and then in 68 they had the White Album, which came out in November, but that's pretty close to Christmas because a lot to take in there. But so going back to 64, recorded over a period of only 7 days in the studio, but spread between August and October because they were so busy touring. The first copy I ever picked up was actually off one of those streets. You remember in the 70s, those of you who live in England, in Oxford Street there used to be a clothes shop, and then underneath in the basement they were selling records kind of at a discount price. So I picked up this Greek copy, and I remember it was at least £2 cheaper than the copy you would buy in the normal record shop. And it's on the, interestingly enough, it's on the EMI label with the red EMI there, which seems to be quite common among Greek pressings. And anyway, I remember showing it to my dad and saying how much it cost, and he was quite pleased because it was quite cheap, relatively speaking. So I'm not sure which order I picked up the remaining copies, but this is a really nice Dutch stereo edition. Immaculate condition, I would guess, because it's in such good condition. It's probably a late 70s, early 80s press, but as you can see, the record is in brilliant condition. Whoever had it either didn't play it very often, or if he did, he looked after it very well. So I don't think I paid an awful lot of money for that, but it was just very nice because I didn't have a sort of clean copy to speak of. And then I picked up this, I think this is an early 80s mono pressing from the UK. Don't think it's 70s. In very good condition. I mean, obviously showing the gatefold here, and the cardboard is in immaculate condition. This one is just on the ordinary Parlophone UK label with the boxed Parlophone there. That's how you distinguish a UK copy. Well, I'm not sure if it's unique to the UK, but anyway. So I didn't have this one on mono, so even though it was not the new vinyl, because the new vinyl, if you want the mono copy of a new vinyl Beatles, you're talking £35 minimum to pick it up on eBay. And even at the time, there were not very many copies in the shops of that. I seem to remember it. They came and went really quickly, so if you didn't pick them up at the time, you're going to be forking out a lot of money for them, unfortunately. But as I say, happy to pick up a 80s mono. In fact, I'm only missing one mono pressing in my whole Beatles connection, and that's Please Please Me. So this was a Japanese copy of Beatles for Sale, which I picked up. Have you noticed how the quality of the cover is so much worse here than, like, compare it to this UK? It's just, it's too dark here. And even on the CD, if you look at the original CD, which came out in 87, it's quite a nice reproduction of the cover here. But then you look at the new CD, and it's noticeably worse. And I noticed that with the new vinyl, and you'd think that with modern technology, things are getting better. And I guess the remaster or the remix, all those stuff you're getting, you know, with the modern technology sound-wise is better. But in terms of the cover, it's actually got worse, so that was disappointing. And the unique thing about this Japanese copy, apart from the fact that text is all here in Japanese, which is interesting, and it's missing the Obi strip, unfortunately, as you probably noticed, but it's coming on the beautiful Apple label, so really happy to have Beatles for Sale on Apple. I'm not sure when this came out. I think I'm right in saying it was 70s, but I don't have an exact date. Mid-70s, I would guess. And then this was a copy I literally picked up yesterday. You notice the different title as well. This is interesting. This one, the Japanese copy's got this horrible red big font which I don't like. The UK and the Dutch one have this tiny Beatles for Sale, which I think is very tasteful. And then, but this one, this Argentinian press has slightly different font, and it has no gatefold, but it's got the information that you get with the gatefold on the back here, and it's all in the Spanish language, as you might imagine. And then what's interesting about this edition is it's on the Odeon, EMI Odeon label. In fact, the guy I bought it off, Kalman, he had two Argentinian Beatles for sale, and it was interesting because one was on the EMI Odeon label, and one was on the red EMI label, you know, similar to the one from Greece. And I can't understand, maybe there were two editions, maybe someone who out there would know which came first. I'm guessing neither of those were 60s pressings. I'm guessing it's a mid-70s press, somewhere around there. Anyway, so that was all my copies. I think I counted 5, and then, or 6 actually, maybe. And then we've got the album. Well, the first criticism it gets is, well, first of all, I just think it's underrated. I mean, it's always the album which never gets raved over. Like, people talk about Hard Day's Night as the best early album, or with the Beatles being a kind of breakthrough sound, and Hard Day's Night being, you know, the first all Lennon-McCartney album, composing-wise. And this album tends to get rather lost in the mix, and I think it's unfortunate. True, they were going at breakneck speed during this period, doing concerts, if not every night of the week, then, you know, a day off was a rarity. And if you think they could only manage 7 days between August and October, which is 3 months, in order to go into the studio, that shows you how little time they had, and actually how little choice they had in terms of their material, because there are 8 Lennon-McCartney originals on here and 6 covers. But the covers they do are sensational for the most part, and 3 of them were recorded in only one take. Rock and Roll Music cover of Chuck Berry's song, which John takes the lead vocal on, that was recorded in one take. The Kansas City, with all the vocal response, hey, 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 and all that, amazingly done in one take. I mean, I know they'd done it live in Hamburg, but I don't think they'd played it too often in the sort of 63, 64 period before they laid this down. I might be wrong, maybe they used to do it in concert, but I seem to think it was a bit of an oldie which they dusted down and put it down in one take. And then the Carl Perkins number, Everybody's Trying to Be My Baby, they also did in one take, which I think is probably the least successful cover of the 6. I think if I had to rank them, Kansas City, Rock and Roll Music would be at the top. I think the Buddy Holly cover of Words of Love is sensational with the vocal harmony. I think Honey Don't is decent, the Carl Perkins tune, but if you listen to the BBC tapes, Lennon is taking the lead, and I think, if anything, I prefer that version probably. And then George takes the vocal on the other Carl Perkins song, and as I say, it's a bit kind of going through the motions, you know, we need another track, let's lay down this song we know backwards kind of thing. And then there's a cover of Mr. Moonlight, Dr. Feelgood, and it's okay, slightly kind of annoying chorus, but good passionate vocal from Lennon in the kind of middle bits, and nothing wrong with it. I think it's this album is a transition from Lennon becoming a kind of, you know, from being a girl-boy love song type of lyricist to talking about songs and lyrics of real meaning, and there's a hint of it in, and self-deprecation as well, and there's a hint of it in I'm a Loser. I wouldn't say he was going through clinical depression at this stage, but he wasn't the happiest camper for various reasons, probably because of the stresses of touring, although it did bring, you know, a lot of good things. It also brought quite a lot of stress, and being in the eye of the hurricane and being chased by the police all the time must have got to you, well, not by the police, but by the fans, and being protected by the police. But I think I'm the Loser's pretty heartfelt, and Lennon would later claim it was one of his favourite songs because it was quite honest. I Don't Want to Spoil the Party, I think, is a glorious lyric, and, you know, very funny song, and country and western, none the worse for that. I love it. No Reply is an interesting song because apparently Lennon said at the time in Liverpool growing up, he didn't use the telephone. So they didn't used to call each other up and say, let's meet at 7 o'clock somewhere. They literally just used to say goodbye the previous day and say, we'll see you at 12 tomorrow. But they didn't call each other up. So a song like No Reply, which mentions the telephone regularly, is kind of interesting. Did Lennon just make this up and put himself in the kind of shoes of someone with a telephone? It's or maybe Aunt Mimi had a telephone and gradually started using it, or maybe when he got rich in 63, 64, he had a telephone. But anyway, I'm labouring the point a bit, but you get my point. And there's 3 examples where John and Paul are really joining forces on this album. Every Little Thing, which is a good song, solid, not absolutely top-notch in my opinion. Babies in Black, with a very sort of morose lyric, sort of love song, or lost love, should we say, lyrics, because the partner seems to have passed away. His girlfriend's partner has passed away, and so she's always dressed in black because of him, which is a bit unfortunate. But the John and Paul harmony are just sublime, and they do this song live, or they did this song live quite a bit, and it's just great to see John and Paul singing together, with Paul taking the higher register 8 days a week, more or less a joint composition between the two of them. I don't think John said he was very proud of it, but it is noticeable to have the first song with an intro, coming in at the beginning. I can't think of an example other than that which came before. There have been plenty since, of course. And then with Paul, relatively subdued contribution to this record. Before I mentioned that, George Harrison does not have a song on this. He didn't have a song on A Hard Day's Night. He didn't have a song on Please Please Me. Up to this time, But Don't Bother Me was the only song he'd contributed. So, and it was not to be until the next year, Help and Rubber Soul, where he'd begin to flower as a songwriter. Paul has only got 2 tracks on this album, really, solo, and it's I'll Follow the Sun, which is a glorious ballad, but actually had been written back in the late 50s. So he just resurrected this one and just recorded it pretty quickly, I guess. I'm not sure what backing there is from the other Beatles other than the very distinctive harmony vocal from John. By the way, if you've tried to do that, it's actually quite difficult to do Lennon's harmony. So get your mate to sing Paul's line and then you try and sing Lennon's, and I don't know, it comes naturally to the Beatles to do, but I've tried it and I just can't seem to see which notes he's hitting, so that's interesting. But I think it's a great song, and What You're Doing is also an underrated Paul song. I mean, it's not as great as you know, some of his classics, but there's nothing wrong with it, and they did this song quite successfully on the Love album. I forget which song they combined it with, but that was quite interesting. So the other criticism of this album, it was recorded in a hurry. Well, if it was, doesn't show, because this band was just at the top of their game, really, in all senses at this stage, or if anything, just getting better all the time. It does portray a certain weariness. I don't know if you can notice it in the cover. I guess if one is really being harsh or strict, then yeah, they do look a bit weary, but it could be nothing more than the fact that they'd been out till 5 o'clock clubbing the night before. I didn't say necessarily a consequence of all the hectic touring. And the album title is quite ironic, should we say. I'm not sure what the word Karen Tyler used for sardonic and not altogether ambiguous album title. Beatles for Sale, as if to say, okay, here's some more product for you guys to buy, and we're a bit sick of making it. Perhaps you could read something into that, but I think it didn't last, because they were soon able in '65, when they started to slow down their touring, to take more time off. And certainly from '66 onwards, they had a lot of time to relax and not just be on a bus or on a train or in a hotel the whole time. So I think, you know, unwarranted criticism this album has received. I'm going to defend it. I think it's a top-notch Beatles album. Not every single track, but near as damn it as we've become used to with Beatles albums. So that was Beatles for Hell. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.